Welcome to Wisdom Within with Tina and Tonya. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how much you give to others, you still feel empty inside? That could potentially be because of a lack of self love. And this is the month of love when we are recording this, but we really want to emphasize that self love is not just a buzzword, it's actually the foundation for healing, growth, and transformation. So before we jump into this, I am Tonya Marie. It's nice to meet you if you're just meeting us. And I help women break free from the constant pressure to give more than they receive. And I help them feel valued and appreciated and reconnect with their inner wisdom through spiritual tools and practices. And this is Tina. Would you introduce yourself, Tina?
Hi, I'm Tina, for those of you who don't know me. And I help women over 45 who have spent years putting others first and wondering who in the heck they are now. Um, I help them figure out what's next, build a good relationship with themselves and build relationship with others and, bring joy and purpose back into their lives. And I do this through soulful practices, women's circles, drumming, drum making workshops
All the good stuff.
and spiritual connection. So,
Awesome. Well, I love this idea of self love for this month, and I love this topic. I feel it's really important, and I feel like it has really kind of become watered down because there's so much talk about self love that it's almost like, ugh, I just don't want to hear it anymore.
mhm.
Um, but I know for myself, it has been working on that. I'm not going to pretend like I always have this immense amount of self love for me because that would not be true. But the more I intentionally focus on building that relationship with myself, I really, the more that has really made a huge impact in my life. And I feel like it is one of those ways in which we tune into that wisdom within, and all of that is part of what helps to grow that self love. But I'd love to hear from your perspective. Like, how has that impacted you, and or have you always had it? Kind of like, let's just start there.
Yeah. No, I have not always had that. And I struggle with it just like everybody else. And I spent years, beating myself up or hating my body or not thinking I'm not good enough and all of the things. And I never learned to bring in that self-love until I got older because, there were times when I remember times when I was working and I would mess up, I'd screw something up and I would beat myself up for weeks because, and I had employees under me who they wouldn't do the same mistake and I'd be like, "Oh, we all make mistakes. Let's fix this and we'll move on." For me, it was like a total beating up and I've done that or I used to do that all of the time. But as I've gotten older, I realized the value in self-love. And for me, um, knowing or being aware for one, and to me, self-love. So I feel like what you just said, it's like become a buzzword. It's like we have self-love, we have self-care. They're like these we hear it all the time. It's kind of like, ugh, you know, and it's really not about um to me it's about that deeper inner wisdom. It's about looking at those things that we say to ourselves, looking at it's not just the bubble baths and the pedicures and the manicures and let's go have a spa day. No, that's not what self-care is to me. It's about how we feed our bodies. It's about how we take care of, are we moving our bodies? Are we, um, you know, and yeah, the bubble baths and the positive affirmations and that, yeah, definitely. But it's more, it's deeper. It's in how we show ourselves that love. And if we're taking care of ourselves in a way like, we think about how we take care of others and how most of us are giving so much to others and taking, we take such good care, we in my generation we're handing our husbands their plate of food. I mean, we're cooking for them every day or we're And it's like, when we look at that and we're taking care of others in such a deep way, why are we not taking care of ourselves in that same way, And so it's it's a good question to start asking yourself.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
so
And I feel like it is and I love how you brought it back to taking care of others, but also, when I think about my loved ones, my kids, because they're top of mind in the on the love list.
yeah.
Um, it isn't even so much something that I do for them. Of course, I take care of them. Of course, I care for them and all those things. But it's so much deeper than that. And there is a love that I have for them just because they exist, just for who they are. It doesn't matter if they make mistakes. It doesn't matter if they get sassy or if I don't care what they do. There is a piece of me that is just, I just love them. And it's, it's not, it's not I love them and do these things for them so that they will love me back. I mean, it is very, because sometimes we can fall into a trap like that. So when I think about this love, unattached love for my kids, that is what I want to work on for myself, to be able to have that unattached love for me, where I just love who I am because of who I am, because of how I be, because of the love I have for others. Like just being able to see all sides of me and actually smile at that girl in the mirror and be like, hey, that's my friend, you know?
Mhm.
That's something that I didn't used to have either. Oh, I was the queen of self-loathing. So
Mhm.
to go from truly literally feeling like a piece of shit to being able to look at myself in the mirror and truly have that eye to eye moment and saying I love myself has been, I mean, talking about it being transformational, that is the definition of transformation for me.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah. So what are some signs for you of have it like lacking self-love? Because I know if you're like me, we ebb and flow, right? There's times when I'm nailing
Mhm.
it and times when I'm not. So what are some signs that you've noticed when you're falling out of love with yourself, maybe? We'll just say that.
Right. So it's having that hard time looking at myself in the mirror. And and I'm frustrated with everything that I do. And that's the generator in me. Remember the
Yep.
generator part.
Yep, that's that theme. Frustration.
Frustration. Well, I'm frustrated in all the things that I do, or I'm anxious. I get a lot of anxiety when I'm in that state of mind, and when I'm not feeling and beating myself up, you know, if if I do something wrong, or if I um say the wrong thing to somebody, and then I'm like, oh God, why did I say that? What? And I've done that for years, and I'm 100% better than I was, but I'm still not perfect. I still have those days when I'm like, I'll beat myself up over a stupid thing that I said, or did they really understand what I meant, or even just like when I'm overly giving to others. So there are times when I'm, you know, like for Joe, even there are times when I'm just like taking care of everything for him, and it's like, now as I've gotten older and stuff, I'm like, oh, he's a grown man and can take care of his own shit, but
We love you, Joe.
but yeah, but no, you know what I mean.
I
It's like,
do. Hmm.
I do I find myself doing that, and that's when I'm going outside of myself, and I'm not wanting to be with myself at all. And so, and part of it is numbing. So, when I'm allowing myself to numb by scrolling on social media, I'm allowing myself to watch Netflix for hours and hours, or I'm allowing, and yeah, okay, we can do some of that for as a wind down maybe. But when we're doing it for hours and it's a numbing or it's a coping mechanism, that is not loving at all to ourselves. We're putting our I keep wanting to say immune system, but it's not, it's our other system.
Nervous system.
Yeah. Nervous system. We're putting that on high, we're moving the by because there's so much that goes on with that when we're doing the scrolling and the numbing and everything. We're moving our nervous system into high alert basically
Hmm.
by doing that. And it's not allowing us to wind down. It's not allowing us to um we're just not being loving to ourselves by doing that. So there's a lot of different ways. It's that negative self-talk I catch myself in sometimes, or like I said before, me beating myself up. And so yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I see that I do that for myself.
Hmm.
So what about you?
I notice for me, one of the biggest ways is lack of boundaries. And it's interesting
Ah,
because I'm like the
yes.
boundary queen. I mean, I can set some boundaries.
Mm.
Ask people, I'm a Scorpio. I can cut people off like no, I mean, it's almost almost scary how quickly I can just cut people out. Um, but I mean, of course, those things don't happen. They're like, it's not on the spur, it's not on a whim, it's been building over time. But the boundaries that I recognize when I'm really starting to have some of those symptoms of being out of alignment with myself and lacking self love is actually boundaries in ways that people may not necessarily experience because I still have a hard boundary with people, especially the unhealthy people. I'm very good at you don't get to bring that to me. I'm really good at that, and that I can continue to hold. But the boundaries that weaken for me are sleep. I stop prioritizing my sleep. Um, Believe it or not, like my cat, because he wants to come and hang out with me just as I'm getting ready to go to bed. So I stay up another hour later with him sleeping on my lap because I just love that. And I love my cat, but I'm giving that cat even more love than I'm giving to myself. Like I would be better off if I would go ahead and prioritize that sleep, knowing how much my body needs it. Um, and so that's another way that I do it. I also I have a lot of really good healthy relationships, which I've built over the years, and I find myself saying yes to more of those, even when maybe my time or my energy is saying you need the rest or say no. So I think that's an important thing to bring up with boundaries because we so often think that boundaries just need or are just about toxic people, which absolutely they are. But they can also be, we can also break those boundaries and stuff with ourselves in another way, that can really end up making us, for me, like let's just talk sleep. When I'm not prioritizing my sleep, I'm also not prioritizing my mental health. And so I wake up more tired. I'm in a downward, more negative place. That impacts my business. It impacts my fulfillment in life. It impacts my ability to show up for others. And all of those things end up impacting the love that I have for myself because just like you, that's when I start bringing in the negative self-talk and it's like all I had to do was go to bed. So that's a big one for me, is
Mm.
boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's part of the scrolling or the Netflix, is setting those boundaries with yourself. And yeah, allow yourself to do it for a short amount of time, but not for, as a way of numbing. And as you were talking about that, that's one of my things too, is the boundaries. I struggle with holding boundaries with, I mean, even like with eating.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're eating foods that aren't healthy or that are, high sugar, sugar, we all know sugar is not good for you. And we're eating all these processed sugar, sh full of sugar foods. our bodies, it's not taking care of our bodies in a good way. And it messes with our mental health, it messes with our physical health, it messes with all the things. And I'm not saying don't eat all those things, but I'm saying, have those boundaries with, maybe have one instead of 10, for me. For me, it's like if I ate one, I'm going to have the whole package.
Mm, yep.
And so, yeah, it's holding those boundaries with yourself and with others. And I think that's one of the key things that we can do. And yeah, so.
I also feel like one of my signals that I haven't been showing myself love is feeling disconnected from my intuition,
Mm,
um, and looking outward. It's almost as if my body's a lighthouse, and when I'm shining that light within and I'm really feeling connected to who I am, I'm illuminating the stuff within, right? I'm doing my shadow work, I'm getting rid of those types of things. I'm becoming more and more aware of my wants, my needs, my desires, my whatever. And when I turn that um, light outward because I'm struggling with me and I don't want to see it inside anymore. And I want you to tell me how to fix this. And I want this person to tell me how to fix that. And I really start turning to the outward um, sources of answers and to help me fix my shit or to whatever. And I really lose touch with my inner wisdom. I really lose touch with that intuition. I don't feel like I am as receptive to the nudges when I'm beating myself up, when I'm not feeling good enough, when I'm in that struggle, self love struggle. I feel like I'm a little more deaf to those little nudges that come through.
hmm Yeah, I totally agree. I do that same thing. And as you were talking about that's another one of my signs is turning outward and asking others for um those pieces of advice and okay, yeah, advice, cool. But don't, when we're asking others to tell us what we should do and then trying to live our lives that way, having all these people telling you what you should do. And, I lived my life a long time doing that. And that is not very loving to ourselves because we have that knowing inside of us. And when we don't allow ourselves to um, go within and find it, then that's not, being true to ourselves and not loving. And I find myself, I don't do it as often as I used to, but I still find myself when I'm in a low spot, as people know on this channel that what I've talked about depression. I deal with depression quite a bit. And I uh notice that when I'm in that depressed state that I do tend to go outside of myself more often. And it can be the scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, um, looking for those hits of dopamine, or whatever, or it can be going to a friend and saying, oh, I don't know what to do. I have no idea or it could be, even asking Joe, I don't know, can you tell me what to do? What should I do? Um, and so I find myself doing that a lot especially when I'm in those lower points in my life.
Mhm. It made me laugh because I asked Brandon something about that the other day where I was like, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And he gave me this look of panic. He was like, I know better than to do this. He was like, please don't make me answer that. It was really funny. But I was just when you mentioned going to Joe, I was like, oh yeah, I tried that recently and it was like he panicked. It was kind of funny. And I am fully aware of why I would have
Yeah.
probably panicked in the same situation. It's like, no. But I think I feel like that contributes to the cycle then again of that self depreciation and speeding ourselves up because if I were to say, here is what I would do, Tina, if I were you, this is what I would do to fix this situation, and then you go do that, well, it worked for me, this is what I do, but it's mine. It probably won't work for you. It's going to have to be, maybe you use that as inspiration or as a recipe, but you make it your own. But when we ask others and we take that advice and we do those things and it doesn't work for us, then we start adding
Yeah.
to the problem of self-love, and taking away from the self-love, because it's like, well, if she could do it and it worked for her, then why won't it work for me? And we end up
Right.
back in that spiral.
Right.
So
And
for
what's wrong
me,
with me?
yep.
Hmm.
So for me, that is also the even more critical time when we're feeling lower on the self-love, that cup is more empty. It's time to really go within and just start working from within instead of from without as well.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important thing to kind of point out, that it not only is it not helpful, but it actually makes it worse.
Yeah, definitely. And it can. And then we get into that mode of beating ourselves up, of, all these self-talk. What is wrong with me? I can't, nothing ever goes right for me. Or, we
I'm
get
so
into those.
stupid, or I'm
Yeah.
not capable.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so we start getting into that mode, and it's definitely a downward spiral from there.
Mm-hmm.
And
So, what are some of your tips or practices that you do to build self love? I mean, we've talked about some of them on the opposite side, but are there specific tools or things that you do or that you recommend to the people that you work with to help strengthen that?
so for me, it's awareness. It's being aware of whenever you find yourself talking to yourself in a certain way, stop and be like, would I say this to my 3-year-old child or grandchild? And that's the one thing that was one thing that when I first started working with this with myself, and I learned about it, and that was the one thing that really triggered me was um, when I was they I don't even know if I was asked the question or where I heard the question was, how would you even say those things to your best friend or your grandchild or your child? Would you say these things that you're saying in your head or to yourself on a regular basis? And when I thought about that, I was like, well, no, I would never say that to my 3-year-old kid or my best friend even, I would never say that. So if I wouldn't say that to them, why am I saying it to myself? And so that awareness of seeing, when and that's the hard part, is being aware of those when um when we are in that mode, because sometimes it's just unconscious, right? It's a something that we are doing um without even thinking about it. Something that we've been doing it for so long that it's just like, a part of us basically. And so bringing that into your awareness and understanding, always uh thinking I don't know if I want to say thinking about it, or just having the awareness, I think, is the thing I want to say. Having that awareness of when those thoughts start to sneak in. How are you feeling when those thoughts start to sneak in? And would I say that to my best friend? And just questioning those things like that. And just I think for me, that's one of the biggest ones. I mean, there's a lot of different other ways that we can. So another one that I really like, that I think is cool, is like just in the shower, is like, when you're washing your arms. Oh, I love you, arms. I love you. Thank you so much, arms, for all that you do. You pick my hands. I love you. Thank you for being able to move. And I love you, legs. I love you, belly. You carried my kids, things like that. And that's just, it's kind of fun to do it in the shower, but it's also just something that's helping you to rewire your brain to thinking, to helping you to start to cultivate that self-love, for yourself, to cultivate the self-love. Um, so I really think that those are some simple ways. There are other things that you can do. You talked about boundaries and setting boundaries. And then, like checking in with yourself. How do I feel today? Or how do I want to feel today? Or what do I need today? And those kinds of things. So,
I think that one's a big one for me is asking myself what it is that I need. So years ago when I was going to counseling, I went for quite some time, um, overcoming all of the things, right?
hmm
Anyway, I remember in this one session that was probably the most impactful, where I was describing a scenario, a situation that had come up that was still very present in my life as far as what was bothering me from it. And we were talking it through, and as I completed the description of the scenario, she asked me, "What was it that you would have needed in that moment? If what did you need in that moment?" And I remember just saying, I just really could have used a hug. Like I just needed a hug. And she's like, "Okay, from whom?" And I realized in that moment that I needed a hug from myself, like from who I am now. Like rewinding and looking at that woman from years ago who was going through all the things. And I realized that the comfort that I needed was truly only could come from me, because there's no one on the planet that knew everything that I had gone through, that had the full context, the full understanding. Even as I explained this event to this therapist, she didn't have all of my upbringing background, all of the years prior. Like you can't fit all of that into a discussion,
hmm
right?
hmm
And and even so, no one would have known, even as I shared some of my experiences that led me to that place. You can't describe it at a satisfactory level to someone else. The only person who knew everything that I had been through, who knew why I made the decisions that I made and all the things, was me. And so for me to be able to go down to that younger version of myself, still adult, let's not pretend this was a child,
hmm
right? This was an adult, but to be able to go back to that individual at that time and just give myself a hug and just say, you know what? You've done the best you can with what you've had. You've made the right choices based on the options that you were given. And you've done a good job, and everything's going to be okay. And just be able to give myself a hug from that place. And that was life changing for me. And I've done that multiple times over the years, kind of reinvented that uh, new topic, but same practice of going back and providing myself of the younger years love and compassion with what I have now. And this has come up several times in the last couple of weeks. I've got friends and clients who are going through some really big life changes. And they're talking about, you can almost hear the beat myself up come in, where they start to, I should never have done this and I shouldn't have waited and all those things. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, we are not going to go there. And I feel like that being able to give yourself compassion for the things that you've done in the past is one of my favorite tools for cultivating that self-love, because we are our own harshest
hmm
critics, and I decided years ago I don't want to do that anymore. Like I'm
hmm
not going to be my harshest critic anymore. I actually choose to do this differently. And that's one of the practices that I do. And it's been incredible. It's been incredible. There's always parts in our past that parenting, right? There's a
hmm
million things I wish I would have done differently, that I could beat myself up over and say I did it wrong. And when I can bring that compassion to myself and say, hey, you were winging it. You've always been winging it. Nobody knows how to parent, and especially not your kids, and you're doing a good job and it's okay.
hmm
That has been, I mean, that is something I would say to you. That is something I would say to a best friend, to one of my kids. And to be able to genuinely do that for yourself very healing.
Yeah,
Very.
definitely. It is bringing that compassion in to yourself is like one of the biggest healing moments that you can have, I think, because that's one thing that I've had to learn too is to just bring in all that compassion because I also, I've gone through I mean, I could sit here and beat myself up for so many things that have happened in the past, right? And I look at it and being the generator that I am, I guilt is another one of my so I had a lot of guilt and I dealt with a lot of guilt and it was always there and it came to a point where it was martyred, I was more of a martyr and then the guilt, along with it. And I finally had to, be like, yeah, you're not going to be this way anymore. And bring in that compassion for, all of the things that have happened in the past and and be like, you know what? You've done the best that you can and I love you still. And you're still, I mean, no matter what. And this is something that I would say to you or my kids or anybody is like no matter what has happened in the past, you're still worthy of being here. You're still worthy of living the life that you want. And so giving that to myself is also a huge healing um moment too. So
Mhm. And this
and I
is,
really
oh, go
oh
ahead.
go ahead. You can go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, this is where we shift from codependence to independence as well, too.
Mhm.
With, because that codependent piece is I need you to make me feel okay based on the choices and mistakes that I have made. Where when we can do that for ourselves, it's no longer something that we're trying to get from other people, and it can really um, help us also build stronger and better relationships with others because I don't need that from you. I know, like, I have that within,
Right.
and when you have someone on the outside who's like, yeah, I know that, I see that and I love you anyway, it's like, well, duh.
Right.
I mean, it's like, thanks, I appreciate it. But if you didn't, you wouldn't be here because I love me.
Mhm.
Um, and that is the shift out of codependence and into that
Mhm.
being able to bring what we need to ourselves.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think that some of the other ways that you can start, help to cultivate that self-love is we talked about you talked about going back to your younger self and maybe even doing some inner child work is really, I remember doing a meditation in my Reiki training and it was a timeline. I think it was a timeline one. I can't remember which one it was, but I went back to the womb and um and then, moved back a little bit, but I realized there was a lot of trauma that happened then too. And working on that and then I've done through the years I've done different um meditations or different work with people who have helped me go back to that child and be like, hugging that child, that inner child who didn't get what they needed, and giving them the love that they needed and helping them to, just letting them know that you're safe and you're here, I'm here for you and those kinds of things. And that is really powerful too. And it's not always easy to go back, but it's always healing to be able to work with that we and the inner child work thing I think is a little bit um trendy too. It's kind of like we get that it's similar to the self-love thing. Everybody says, oh, you need to tap into your inner child or whatever, but really it is powerful work if you do it in the right way. If you do it with a good practitioner or be able to know how to go back and see that inner child
Mm.
and work with them in the right way.
Hmm. I agree. And it is so valuable, and it is to actually be able to have a conversation with that inner child and finding out like, okay, why do you feel this way? Where did this come from? And really start reliving some of the things that you
Hmm.
heard and saw and witnessed and created meaning out of and all of that. It can be, I think that's why it's helpful to have a practitioner, because it can be
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah,
And it can bring up a lot of things that maybe we'd forgotten about or suppressed or didn't want it to ever remember. And so those things can be, um, absolutely, you can do that work on your own. But if you start to recognize or feel that you could use additional support, that is the time to reach out and get that additional support, whether it be
yeah,
therapy or energy healing. I know we do an inner child healing in our Reiki
hmm,
practitioner training that we do on day 3,
yeah,
sending Reiki to ourselves as children, and it's always fun to see the pictures of each of us as little kiddos and that little
yeah,
innocent face that we had, and just bringing, allowing ourselves to be kids.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I, I, I think I really feel like it's a very powerful tool, but I definitely think that you may need guidance on it,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, because it can be something that we end up staying stuck in if we're not careful. So
Mm-hmm.
just know that,
Yeah.
and if you're going into it, just know that um there could be a lot comes up, and that reach out if you need, just like
Mm-hmm.
what you said. So
Another one of my practices is fun. I I really love mirrors and mirror gazing. I think there's a lot of beauty that can be done in there. And I was telling you before we started this
yeah.
call that this last weekend I was leading a guided meditation with a group of ladies, and those just come through me. I don't go in with a script and I don't go in with a plan. It's like I'm midway through and oftentimes I'm like, oh, I didn't realize we were going to be going there. Like it's a fun adventure for me too. And in this specific one, we went into a cottage and there was a mirror there. And then we did some loving kindness meditation, uh, just different language around that for different groups of people. But one of the ones that we did was for ourselves. And it was doing the mirror gazing inside a meditation. It was actually really cool to guide them to see themselves in the mirror, to step closer, to approach even closer, and then to look in their eyes, in their reflection. With I've done that before in groups and group programs where we've had a physical mirror, but to do it even in a meditative state was it was a very different experience, but it was also very beautiful. And to be able to just look at yourself in the mirror, making that eye contact, holding that eye contact. You can do that in real life with a mirror. You can do it in your cell phone. But it was fun to do that in a meditation as well, and to just be able to sit in the discomfort of what comes up with that, and how we fidget and how we want to look away and how we want to start to nitpick the wrinkles around our eyes, or pull away from the eyes and start looking at the forehead or looking at the lips. Or I mean, I mean, that is, once you can get past the squirmy uncomfortable feeling and know I'm going to sit here and continue to stare at my eyes and make
Mhm.
eye contact with myself, once you can get past that, it is a very beautiful um practice. Very
Yeah.
beautiful practice.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. I have done that a few times myself. I really struggled with it at first. But nowadays it's not as hard, but yeah, it
Do you add
it's
the
a powerful one.
affirmations with them when you do them? I know I typically do, where I'm looking at it and saying, I love you, I honor you, thank you. But I was just curious if you did.
Yeah, no, I've not done just gazing, just staring at myself and just be like, and then it usually ends up being I love you, and and thank you and things like that, offering gratitude to myself, but um I don't usually come up with the affirmations other than I love you,
Mm,
so, or
love
thank
it.
you. Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, those are some powerful practices that you can do to help you start cultivating that self-love. And the other thing that I really want to express too, though, is I love these ideas of building, these different practices, but it's also in the day to day, in our day to day life. It's in how we, like I said earlier, how we feed ourselves, how we, are we moving our bodies? Are we taking care of our bodies in a way that shows that we love ourselves? How are we showing up in our life? Are we dressing, even are we dressing in a way that shows that we love ourselves? Because sometimes we miss those parts. We have all these practices, but then in our life, how are we actually, you know, how are we actually doing, showing that we love ourselves? And it's not just for outward appearances, but it's for, showing ourselves. So when we're, and this has been that's probably one of the hardest ones for me in the, and especially when I'm in a depressive state, which I have been for the past couple of years, past 3 years, I figured out, is, you know, taking care of myself in that loving way. And it's all about, I wouldn't, so when I take care of my kids, I take care of them in, a certain way. I take care of them. I give them nutritious foods. I make sure they eat healthy. I make sure they have all of the things that they need. But when it comes to myself, I'm I feel selfish, or I'm not, and I'm eating foods that make my body feel sick, or I'm eating foods that help me stay in a state of depression, or I'm not moving my body, which helps me stay in that state of depression. I wear sweats every single day. I wear, my big old robe all day or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's like, um when we can show ourselves that love too in those everyday things, along with doing these practices to help us start to build that self-love. I think that's probably um extra powerful, is like making sure that you're doing the things that are showing that you love yourself.
And I feel also living in integrity too,
Yeah.
with when we're behaving in a way that isn't true to our beliefs or true to us, that also really impacts our ability to love ourselves. And I know, I mean, I've had times where I would say I was living a lie. I
Hmm.
was living other people's priorities, other people's beliefs, and I was really swimming in it and trying so hard to live up to those expectations and to be the person who, um, and those things were not true to me. And
Hmm.
somewhere deep down to the core, I knew that, even though I wasn't totally aware of it at certain times. But when I did fully say, okay, this is my truth, and then started living from that place, didn't even have to announce it to others. It was just making the decision that this is who I am, this is what I believe and how I be. um that also was very helpful in
Yes.
that, because I knew I was living a lie,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to love yourself when you know you're living a lie.
Right.
um so even if you're stuck in that spot and you're not sure how to get out of that, just doing the internal work of, okay, I'm still going through these motions while I figure it out, but this is no longer for me and I don't subscribe to this. That in and of itself was like, I felt my inside just, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that. Okay, cool. um so yeah, those are things that are also.
Yeah, definitely very powerful. I know well, I was living in similar situations where allowed um I've allowed others to tell me what to do and living outside of my integrity, not living my truth, not speaking my truth, and not being truly myself. And that's just, definitely those things are a way of a big form of self-love is by allowing yourself to live in that integrity, living your values and knowing what your values are
Mm-hmm.
and understanding um, who you are, and I know that's hard sometimes is trying to figure out who am I now. But it's a good fun thing to learn.
Feel like I
It's like,
answer or ask myself that question all the time. Like I feel like I keep having these huge tower moments where it's like everything comes down and then I build back up and then I have this new awakening and everything comes down and
yeah,
I'm actually pretty
it's like,
comfortable
who
with I
am
don't
I?
know who the hell I am. I'm just
Right.
figuring it out each day. I'm okay with that.
Right. Right. And it is.
Um,
I do that in meditations a lot. Who am I?
yep, yep, yep.
And
So,
that's that's another thing too. I'm sorry, is like meditations, guided meditations, asking, who am I, or calling back pieces of yourself that you have sent out.
mhm.
So those are another other powerful ways to do it too.
And I feel too that if you're in a space where you're not living the life that you want, or you're not living in integrity with what you believe or who you are, those visualizations of, okay, who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, I want to be this person or I want to, whatever. It is, who do I want to grow into is more of the direction for that, and allowing yourself to, you know, work through that and have that visualization
Mm-hmm.
for that end result, kind of, and watching yourself grow in integrity and in your truth, and getting to know yourself in that way can also be a really good one to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love I just recently started doing this on an everyday basis as I get out when I get out of bed in the mornings, be right before I even get out of bed, I ask myself, who am I today? Who do I want to be today is what I say. And so it's like, okay, I'm the Tina who takes care of herself and who goes for her walks and who does, and that is another good thing, a good powerful way. And it's also a change in the mindset too. So it's changing my mindset so that I'm taking care of myself. It's like, who do I want to be today? Do I want to be that person who's in the sweatpants and t-shirt sitting on the couch eating bonbons, or do I want to be the person out walking and taking care of myself? So,
So, do you feel that there has been a ripple effect when you shift to focusing on self love for yourself? Because I do want to really stomp out the myth that this is selfish. Because
mm,
there is, I mean, there typically, if some, okay, my belief is that if someone is telling you that you are being selfish, that okay, maybe there are some times where you are, but 90% of the time it is because I'm using that to manipulate you. So
mhm.
or they are, not me, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when we really look at, if we were to just drop that selfish nonsense off the table and really build and foster this relationship of self-love with yourself, what have you seen as a change in your life as a result of doing that?
So I have seen relationships change. Like, I mean, so my relationship with Joe, for a long time, it was kind of a struggle there for a while. It was like, we were both working full time. We were both all doing all the things, and I was trying to take care of the whole family and and when I stopped, well, I didn't stop taking care of everybody, but when I started taking care of me and I started focusing on me, it took a minute for everybody to kind of come to terms with that I was taking care of me, because then all of a sudden they're like, wait, mom, you're not 100% focused on me. And he was like, wait, but I saw a change in our relationship. Like it was like a whole, 90-degree 180-degree change. I mean, it was like a huge change in our relationship. And it was just because I was taking care of me and I was focusing on, just knowing myself. And I was allowing, I was, once I was able to cultivate that self love in me, I was able to give that love more. And I was able to be different in the way that I was giving that love. So it was more of a unconditional. It wasn't conditional at all. It's more unconditional. And so I saw the way that that relationship changed. I've seen how um it helps me when I am really working on the self-love, how my mindset changes, my whole outlook in life changes, my perspectives change. And I know that uh it's helping me to, like I said, it's like, for a long time, when I'm not doing the self-love thing, or when I'm not paying attention to how I'm speaking to myself, or when I'm not um paying attention to my body or how I'm taking care of my body, I am in this, like I talked about before, the downward spiral, and I'm not able to give that love. I'm not able to send out the love to you, to my, my Facebook world or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like my groups that I have, or I'm not I'm not able to give that out as much. I don't have it in me. I don't, I'm going through the motions, but the all the emotion, that love is not there. And when I'm fully allowing myself to um, work on myself and focus on me, then all of a sudden I have all this extra that I can give out to everybody else. I can give it out to my dog. I can give it out to my cats. I can give it to Joe, you know, where when I'm in this contracted um depressive state, I don't have it to give.
Mhm.
I'm pushing it. If I um need to give extra, it's like forcing, it's like, well, maybe it's a little bit conditional, or maybe it's a little bit, I'll only give you this much because that's all I have to give.
All I've got. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think that is, for me, that is the things that I've noticed the most, is when I'm in that um, different mind, that I'm able to give more. I'm able to take care of my family easier. I'm able to take care of my business easier. I'm able to just give that love to everything that. And for me, I don't know. I just love. I love love anyway, so it's kind of like, I'm that Pisces who's like, the dreamy. Oh.
I think for me, one of the biggest shifts I've seen has been my relationship with my kids, but also the way that I kind of counsel them in my own way. You know, the phrases that I learned growing up was like, well, what did you do to provoke that? Or what did you do? And, and so what I, having stopped that cycle, and that's where that came, was self love, was stopping that cycle. But, I catch myself now when I talk to my kids and I'm like, you matter too, and just don't forget that you matter too. And
Mhm.
if you need a day to stay home because your mental health matters too, and your stress level matters too. And giving them a lot more choices of, I mean, they're older. My youngest is the only one left at home and he's in high school. And so I'm putting more trust in him, because I can. And it's kind of that cup that you're talking about too, but it's I trust me to know what's best for me, and therefore I trust him to know what's best for him.
Hmm.
And we can have those conversations, and it's a very different experience than it was even with my oldest. I mean, I was starting on this path with him, but I wasn't there yet, you know, and so the way that I parented him looks very different than the way that I've parented my youngest, just because of that alone, where it's like, hey, you know, this is all just programming, and what matters is you. And so I definitely see a change in even the way that I choose to parent as a result of loving myself. And I think that's where it came from, is trusting myself too. Which was part of that love, right? Is I love myself, I trust myself, and as a result, I can show up and parent in the way that feels right to me, that feels good to
Hmm.
me, and supporting my kids in a way that I would not have had the capacity to do um, when I was in that state of self loathing.
Yeah.
So that's one way that I've definitely seen that ripple effect come out. Um, and then, um, you know, same thing for me as far as, I mean, I've made really, I mean, I went through a really tumultuous, terrifying divorce. I didn't necessarily feel like that was an act of self love, but looking back on it, I see how much it was. I remember saying, life's too short to be this unhappy.
Hmm.
Even though in the time I didn't feel like I was loving myself, that was a statement of self love. I deserve happiness. I choose happiness. Um, and then other relationships and breakups. And I remember having this realization with a person I was dating, where I remember saying in my mind, I'm a catch. I deserve this. I deserve what it was that I desired and what I wanted in a relationship. And that came from learning to love myself, trust that it's okay, giving myself permission to have my needs and wants met. And really, you know, it allowed me to end relationships that weren't correct for me and that weren't giving me that, to be able to make room for the ones that would come in and be
Hmm.
supportive and loving, and what it was that I really needed and what I really wanted in my life. And um, so yeah, those were things that definitely, the ripple effect. And talk about modeling for your kids, to be able to leave an incorrect relationship, um, and then being able to let them witness that as well. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it's so funny to me, because in some aspects of my life, there are individuals who would say those are my biggest failures. And I'm over here like, oh, that's my biggest wins, you know, like
Yeah.
ending relationships and whatnot. And even having my kids, I mean, it wasn't necessarily dinner conversation, but it was something that they absolutely witnessed. And I'm not going to
Hmm.
pretend like they didn't watch whatever and glean from whatever they did with that. So yeah, those were some big ones for me too. Was ending those relationships, letting those relationships be complete.
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah. I know with my kids, I very much raised two different families. My oldest was 9 years older than the youngest, so she got, the worst of me. I want to say the worst of me, but um, she saw the crap. The youngest, she was raised with a different mom, and so but the relationships that I have with them now is like totally different, and they see um yeah, it's with the way that I take, when I'm taking care of myself and when I'm doing the things that I need to do for myself, we have a different relationship, and we're able to, and even with my grandkids, I can have fun with my grandkids, and of course they're teenagers now, so they don't, well, they're actually over young adults now, and so grandma's not as cool as she used to be, but except for the 3-year-old, she still likes me. So, but, but you do have those. It is a different relationship when you're taking care of yourself, and you're able to have that self love, and you're um, prioritizing yourself, it's a different relationship with everybody around you. It's not just, close family. It's, your friends and your business acquaintances and all the things we have. It's a whole different way that we show up
Mm-hmm.
when we're doing when we're prioritizing ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And I think it's over talked about. It's overstated a lot. And so when we overstate that, then we kind of grow deep to it. We don't hear it as much. But it is so true when we prioritize our self-love, that we will change relationships, and that we have that, because what they say, when you can't pour from an empty cup. When we have that overflowing, it's like what I was talking about before. I'm able to give out that love more easily than I am when I don't have that, when my cup is empty. And it's true. And it's overstated so much that we don't believe it half the time, I don't think, because we have so many. It's all the trend, and it's all the everybody says you need to cultivate your self-love, and you need to cultivate self-care and all this. But it is so true that if you prioritize yourself, take care of yourself, your relationships will flourish in ways that you'd never even believe, and you're able to give so much more to people when you're taken care of, when you've been able to learn how to give yourself the love that you need. And it just it overflows into everything else that you do. So that's
Creates that transformation. And really, what is it that we all want? We all want happiness. We all want to live a life where we feel fulfilled. And
hmm
this is one of the best ways to create that for yourself, is to really start spending time in um, and 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 that's what I would encourage, is with all of the things that you've heard us say, pick one thing, just one, that feels doable, one thing that you want to try, and stick with it for a while.
hmm
And just allow yourself to be open to, if it feels like too much of a stretch to go to I love myself, then what if I did? What would it look like if I did? And just be curious around it, and really allow yourself, if I loved myself, what would I do today? What would I how would I how would I show myself love today? And really doing that on a daily basis for a while, until you can kind of get past some of that and allow yourself to truly let it in. Um,
hmm
that would be my recommendation, is just, you don't have to do everything that we've brought up. We've brought up lots of different tools and
yes.
techniques and tips. Just pick one that was like, okay, that's the one thing I can do. Um, and
And
and and then allow it in.
yeah, and just you know this one's overstated all the time too. Self-love is not selfish. And it's overstated so much, but it is so true. It's not, we're not, in no way are we being selfish, because what we're doing is we're you know caring for ourselves in a way that helps us to care for everybody else, and in a different way. So um and I really agree with you in picking one. And and even if it is just asking yourself in the morning, what do I need today? you know and that's all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But ask yourself, what do I need today, then give it to yourself. Not just asking the question, but also taking those little action steps is going
Mm-hmm.
to help you to start to move into taking cultivating that self-love. So
Yep. I love it. I love it. I love it. Is there
yeah.
anything else that you feel we need to add, or something that maybe anything else that we need?
Anything else? No, I think I'm good.
I feel like I'm good
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So if any of you are interested in working with either Tina or I, we do definitely work with individuals. We work on these topics of self love. This is what we swim in, even though we don't necessarily promote that in that way, everything that we do really guides people back to within and really
Hmm.
helps build and cultivate that self love within. So, if you want to work with either of us, down in the description below, there are different ways to find us online and different offers that we have. So, definitely invite you to check that out. Um, and then, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and share so that we can help get this amazing message out to others. If there's someone that you know that really could benefit from hearing this conversation today, please send them a direct message. Drop it in their inbox, send it in an email, whatever it is, however you communicate, but make sure you share that with them.
Yes, definitely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. We will see you again soon.
All right. See ya.